I'm so excited to be back and I can't wait to be out on court and I hope to see you there.
Alex Eala and the growing storm around her, something larger than a standard warm-up tournament, is taking shape in Birmingham. Before a single competitive ball has been struck on English grass, Filipino supporters have already made themselves visible across the UK, converting what might have been quiet pre-Wimbledon preparation into a genuine spectacle. Less than 4 days removed from an emotionally charged French Open first-round defeat, the 20-year-old Manila native touched down on British soil holding the second seed at the Lexus Birmingham Open, barely pausing before diving straight back into match mode. At Edgbaston Priory Club, Philippine flags were already flying at practice courts, their red, white, and blue and golden sun design serving as a visual declaration that her fanbase had arrived well ahead of schedule, a full month before Wimbledon's famous gates swing open. What is building across the United Kingdom feels less like random enthusiasm and more like a coordinated prelude, a dry run for what could be among the most closely watched Wimbledon runs in recent years, provided the energy sustains itself. The weight she carries into England 4 days before landing in Birmingham. On May 26th, Eala lost to close friend and tour companion Iva Jovic in straight sets, 4-6, 2-6, in what was her first ever Grand Slam main draw appearance. The defeat stung not only because of the occasion but because of who delivered it. The two players are genuinely close, and Jovic's post-match social media tribute, expressing a wish that both could have won, alongside a widely shared photo of their embrace at the net, gave the moment a tenderness that made the loss harder to process cleanly. Ella's response to her 16 million combined followers was measured and forward-looking, 11 words acknowledging the result, promising a return, and pointing toward the grass season ahead. She offered no elaboration, no visible distress. Then she boarded a flight to England. She arrived in Birmingham carrying two distinct forms of pressure. The emotional layer is obvious: a painful Grand Slam debut, a loss to a friend, a compressed recovery window. But the second layer is colder and more structural. Ranking arithmetic. Eala heads into the grass swing defending 219 points accumulated during the 2025 season across Birmingham, Ilkley, Nottingham, and Eastbourne, where she famously survived 4 match points before ultimately losing a dramatic tiebreak final. Every match she plays over the next 4 weeks is measured not just against an opponent, but against herself from 12 months ago. Failing to replicate those results means a direct ranking drop, and that mathematical reality is already in play before her first serve lands. Adding another dimension to the pressure is her projected opening match, a reported rematch against Linda Furvtova, the player who knocked her out of Birmingham last year in a hard-fought 3-set contest. It is not simply a return to competition. It is a return to a specific unresolved chapter on a surface where small margins decide everything. A diaspora on the move while the on-court stakes have been quietly escalating. Something entirely different has been developing in the stands and beyond. The Filipino community in the UK, one of the most sizable in Western Europe, has begun treating Birmingham not as a tennis tournament stop, but as a cultural landmark. 12 months ago, Eala entered this same tournament without a seeding, exited in the round of 32, and departed with almost no media coverage. The contrast this year is striking. The LTA has leaned into her story as one of the central promotional narratives of the event, and the crowd presence around her has shifted accordingly. The reach of this support was already on display at the 2026 Italian Open in Rome, where veteran Filipino sports journalist Dion Castro noted that fans had flown in specifically from London, Germany, and Malta to watch her compete on clay. By the end of that tournament, even local Italian spectators had started chanting her name in accented English. Now transpose that same dynamic to Birmingham, 2 hours by train from London, and the turnout is not a surprise. It is the logical outcome of geography and emotional investment converging. This is a pattern, not an anomaly. The so-called Eala traveling fanbase has surfaced in Melbourne, Indian Wells, Rome, and now the West Midlands. Tournament organizers have been forced to adjust in real time, revisiting staffing, security arrangements, court allocations, and media logistics in ways they rarely have to consider for a player ranked around number 37 in the world. At the 2026 Australian Open, officials were reportedly caught unprepared by the volume of attention around her outer court sessions, with some supporters unable to get in despite early arrivals. The Pacquiao parallel and what it implies. UK-based WTA analysis platform Chalk Dust Media has framed the commercial phenomenon around Eala in terms that have started to travel beyond specialist tennis circles. Their analysis draws two comparisons. The first is to Manny Pacquiao, an athlete whose name could generate arena-filling interest independent of the specific event or opponent, suggesting that Eala is approaching a similar kind of gravitational pull in her sport. The second comparison is more structurally significant. The argument that Eala could function as a gateway figure for women's tennis across Southeast Asia in a manner comparable to how Li Na's success transformed the sport's footprint in China. A 670 million person region covering the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia has been difficult territory for the WTA to penetrate commercially. The suggestion is that the ecosystem already forming around Eala, regardless of the fact that she is yet to win a tour-level title, is already behaving like a catalyst for that kind of expansion. Within the locker room, players have stopped treating the energy around her as background noise. Colombian player Camila Osorio has drawn a direct comparison between the Filipino fanbase and Colombian tennis supporters, widely considered among the most emotionally intense in the women's game. Meanwhile, IGA Swiatek has reportedly described Filipino crowd support as the most powerful she has encountered on tour, noting that it does not simply back one player but alters the emotional texture of entire matches. When rivals are publicly naming your fans as part of their competitive experience, the crowd has crossed a threshold. It is no longer atmosphere. It is a factor. The WTA itself has had to issue quiet clarification that mid-match chanting and between-point vocal support from Filipino fans do not breach any formal code of conduct, a clarification that only became necessary because the behavior was consistent enough and distinctly different enough from traditional tennis decorum that officials were repeatedly being asked to weigh in. 3 stages. 1 trajectory. Eala's grass schedule forms a clear pressure arc. Birmingham runs June 1st through 7th and serves as the opening examination, a test of whether she can shake Paris quickly enough and find her footing on a surface she knows, against opponents who know her weaknesses. Eastbourne in mid-June is where the stakes become sharper still, since it is there that her most significant grass court points from 2025 were earned. Then comes Wimbledon in late June, where she will enter the main draw directly based on her ranking, a milestone for Filipino tennis in the current era. British media, including Metro, have already begun encouraging Filipino communities across the UK to attend her opening matches at SW19, framing it as much as a cultural occasion as a sporting one. The commercial implications of a deep grass run extend further than the usual ranking conversation. Potential acceleration of Southeast Asian sponsorship interest, increased visibility for Philippine-based brands, and a shift in how the women's tour maps its emerging market strategy. The longer story, none of this cancels the difficulty of what happened in Paris. A first Grand Slam exit against a close friend, processed in public, resolved with a hug and 11 words on Instagram. That is a specific kind of emotional compression. But the response to it has been instructive. No retreat, no silence, no extended reset. A flight to England, training sessions on English lawns, and an imminent first-round match that carries all the weight of unfinished business. The fans who traveled from Malta to Rome, from Sydney to Melbourne, from Manchester to Birmingham were not responding to recent results. They were already there, already moving, already organized, reading a trajectory that analysts are only now beginning to formally document. The Pacquiao comparison did not build this momentum. It simply gave existing momentum a recognizable name.